Hello and welcome to episode 90 of the Boot Nerds podcast. JayMike, how are things?
Things are good in Denmark, my friend. Slowly getting ready for the full Black Friday and Christmas madness. But how are things in Canada?
Things are good. Same thing. Black Friday madness is upon us. Speaking of which, not to plug what you guys were expecting me to plug, but at puregripsocks.com from now until December 1st, which is the Tuesday, you can get 15% off your entire order at puregripsocks.com with coupon code BLACK15. That does exclude the team packs because those are already discounted to 20% off. But if you're looking for a great deal on some Pure Grip socks that are already a great deal to begin with, let's be honest. Same thing with Pure Sleeves. You can get 15% off for the next few days. So be sure to take advantage of that. Also, every $5 spent on the website does earn you an entry to potentially win an Xbox Series X. The winner will be selected for that on December 15th. And there's also free entries on the website. Go check it out, puregripsocks.com. It will be linked down below.
Wait,
cool.
So you can save 15% more on the socks that are already hella cheap?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Craziness, I know.
Well done, my man. That's a pretty good offer. I mean, if there wasn't already an excuse to buy the Pure Grip socks, because they're actually, I reckon they're the best value for money grip socks out there. I've said it a lot of times, but if there wasn't already an excuse, now you have it. There's no excuses now.
No excuses. Zero.
So there we go. But Josh, we're not talking about grip socks today. Well, we talk about grip socks all the time, but we're not talking about the Pure Grip socks today. We are talking about, as the title suggested, football boots that have evolved over the years, but which are also basically the same as they were many years ago, but just in like with a little bit of a new facelift and a new wrapping, so to speak.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like football boot concepts and technologies that have been reincarnated. It's kind of like that.
Yes, that's see. This is native English speakers. They're just better at like coining the phrase correctly, like and you know, be spot on. But the whole thing was basically inspired by the video you did where you said that the X Ghosted.1 was basically the reincarnation of the F50 adizero. And it is basically an F50 adizero. And, you know, we've talked about it a lot already. So obviously we can start with that. But before we get into the video itself, we're going to answer some questions at the end of the podcast as per usual. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section right down below. And if you enjoy the content, as always, leave a like on the video. It's going to perform better. We're going to be happy. We're going to make more podcasts. Everybody wins. So go ahead, slap that like button. And of course, if you haven't subscribed already, get to it. But with that said, Josh, it was basically inspired by the whole X is basically an adizero thing you said. And I just dug up the Sambas from 2014. I could have taken any adizero. It would probably have been more fitting if I took the OG 2010 version, but I don't have that in the synthetic. Wait, no, I don't. I don't have the synthetic one. But you know, it has everything the adizero did, but it's just made with better and lighter materials than it was. Oh, is it? That's round about the same. Yes, right. It's actually a little bit heavier. That's mostly because of the tooling and the Carbitex. But they've basically taken the same minimalistic approach and used the best materials they have to make it as fast and feel as fast and responsive as possible. And it's a fun concept because it's not. I wouldn't go out and say it's rocket science because it's a proven concept. It's not like they've reinvented the wheel. They've just took a concept and made it better. And I think we'll see that whole idea carries over to all of the boots we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how we talk so much about marketing on this podcast because brands are always trying to spin what they're doing as like new and never been done before. And there's a lot of new and never been done before in regards to the X Ghosted. I think from a construction standpoint, we've never seen a football boot like it. And certainly the Carbitex insert and the sole plate tooling in general, again, really unique. They've done an excellent job there. But it's interesting how we saw basically all the brands from 2014 onwards shift away from synthetics, and now they're slowly, seemingly coming back to them, which is but presenting them as new and never been done before, of course. And I think the X Ghosted.1 and even the Plus, it's a great comparison to that OG F50 Adizero with the thin synthetic upper. But there's an argument to be made that this is the closest thing you can get to a Tahitian synthetic Mercurial at this point as well, from a touch perspective at the very least.
And that's the funny thing, because when Adi did the reset in 2015, they kind of went away from this whole OG F50 Adizero feel, right? And it kind of feels like they took the detour so they could go back to the boots that they had been making for 5 years, because now people wanted them again. So it just they I don't know if it was on purpose. If it was an absolute piece of like mastermind plan, but it just feels like they said, okay, we're going to take one for the team. We're going to do something completely different, call it X, and then people are going to want the OG Adizero concept that feels kind of watered down at the moment. And then we're just going to bring it back more or less the way it was, but with better technology.
But like, you know what it was?
That's flipping brilliant.
Yeah, but when you really look back at like, because I think we can argue that 2015 F50 wasn't as good as 2014 F50.
Agreed.
Right? But still, it still had they tried some new things with the 2015 model. It was a decent boot nonetheless. Then they scrap F50 and they release X15.1, which is probably the furthest departure in the speed boot category from the F50 Adizero since it was first introduced. And while there are people that like that boot, I think the overwhelming majority were like, give us back the F50. And then every model after that, X16, 17, 18, and 19, we got closer and closer and closer to that original concept, to the point where now I feel like, okay, they've finally given it to us. It's just, I don't know, it's a little bit strange to me that they decided to basically wait 5 years. But that's the football boot industry.
Man, I mean, that's playing the long game. Some genius was sat there saying, okay, it's going to suck for 5 years. And they didn't suck. You know, all the X boots have been good, bar the X15, I think. But, you know, it's going to suck for a couple of years. But finally, then we can get the demand for the F50 feel back. Just make a minimalist speed boot and we're going to win big time. Kudos to whoever saw that. Absolute genius. But it's just funny, right? The thing is that apart from the 2014 Adizero, I think the X Ghosted is better than every Adizero out there in every department, especially when it comes to comfort. These are comfortable, they fit you well, and they might not be as, should we say, generally appealing as the X19s were. We also see a lot of players actually switching out of the X19s and into the Nemesis now, because it's a little bit more, has a bit more of a wide appeal, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think if you really liked the X18 and 19, the closest thing to that now from the Adi brand from current models is actually the Nemesis more so than it is the X, because the X has really gone in a completely different direction. And I will say I don't entirely agree with you with the comfort side of the X Ghosted. I think it's a comfortable enough boot, all things considered, but I'm not 100% on board with the way that they've done the one-piece upper this time around. I'm not sure that it works as well with the full synthetic. And it occurred to me, like, if you relate it back to like Vapor 11, Vapor 10, that had full Tahitian synthetic uppers, one piece, there was significant splits at the top part, kind of the opening area to get your foot in and out. And that also makes a pretty big difference when you tie the laces in terms of allowing that upper part of the sides of the upper to kind of wrap as closely to your foot as possible, where because of the shallower lacing system and the slightly off-centered design that they've gone with, along with the complete lack of stretch that it has along that top edge, it's trickier to get on than I think it needs to be. And I think if there was just a little bit of a split, even like a traditional tongue, similar to like the older F50 Adizero models, I think the boot would actually be better off for it from a fit and maybe comfort perspective. But who knows?
Don't you think that then in terms of the materials, when it's on your foot, that it fits you better? It feels, the shape feels better, the way it moves. Okay, it is a little bit stiff and it wrinkles up quite a lot in the beginning. But don't you think that, again, bar the 2014 and maybe the 2015, these are better than at least the first generations of the Adizero?
Oh, absolutely. If we're comparing it to like early F50s, definitely it's a better overall fit. It's certainly better in terms of overall comfort, certainly through the heel, I would say. I think for me, what's most surprising about that boot every time I put it on in the last couple months is, wow, this feels so much different than every other football boot that we've had for the last 5 years. Because it just doesn't have, it's not soft, which sounds like a bad thing when you say that, but it's also the thing that like synthetic boots killed off soft boots once upon a time.
Oh, yes.
And then knits came in and soft was kind of reintroduced as a cool thing, kind of indirectly. People, I think more so were into the idea of a sock boot because it just made sense from a conceptual standpoint, where now we're getting away from that. And there's such a change up in feel. And again, if you were a fan of those thinner synthetic boots, be it an F50 or a Mercurial in the Tajin synthetic days, this is the boot for you. You need to try these out.
And the thing is, I think the key what you said is it's not soft, and when I think of soft, I think of like plush and lovely and padded, right? But these are, in Danish we would also call these soft because they're pliable. Like compared to the 2010 adizero, this is actually like, this moves with the foot. It doesn't stretch, but it's just like, it's pliable. It's moldable.
Yeah, pliable is the right word. Soft is not. You're right. Soft. When I think soft, I think of like, there's like some squish
padded,
to the upper,
yeah.
Right? There's a
squish is a good way, yeah.
Yeah.
But the funny thing with the X, so we don't talk about that all episode, is that when we looked at like older boots, the first time I saw the X Ghosted Plus, I thought, well, that is the Lotto Zero Gravity 14 years later.
Yeah, totally.
And I know it's not fair to say that they copied the Zero Gravity, because they didn't, but it looks, they look pretty similar. They have a pretty similar silhouette, and yes, the X Ghosted Plus is miles better than the Zero Gravity was, but the fit in the two boots is somewhat similar to some extent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, they both have they're two of the most snug-fitting laceless boots ever made. The difference between the two, and we just talked about difficulty of putting the boots on. If you've never had the pleasure of trying to put on an OG Zero Gravity, my goodness.
Don't try it. It's not a pleasure. It's just
if you want to like scrape all the skin off your fingers and you want to rip your socks while you will rip your socks, no joke, putting those boots on. It's insane.
It's not, yeah.
But once they're on, if they fit you properly, that was a very ahead of its time football boot. I'll say that much.
Definitely. But it's just funny how the X Ghosted really, and that's the first time a laceless boot has properly felt like the Zero Gravity to me, like more or less 1-to-1. Obviously, it's lighter, it fits a lot better, it moves better with the foot. Lockdown is significantly better to me, but it's that's the boot that gets closest to it. If it's a fair comparison, I don't know. Another thing I just wanted to mention is that, we talked about how the lightest football boot ever, the Puma Ultra SL, is like, it's basically just the Puma Evo Speed SL that's just been modernized and trimmed down a little bit.
Yeah, very similar. There's not a giant difference between the two at all.
And it's even like
I was kind of like, that's one of those boots. I was excited to try them on, but at the same time, I had to keep my expectations in check, because when you're literally working with like every gram counts, it's like how much variation can you truly have in the fit and feel of a football boot?
Yeah, and it does feel different to the Evo Speed XLs, because there isn't any padding in the heel, for instance. Is that more comfortable? I would say there's less stuff around your foot. If you like that and feel that's comfortable, then yeah, they're more comfortable, but it's the same. Come on, it's the same.
What's funny? Okay, I've had a lot of people ask me about both Evo Speed SL and these new Rimac boots. Is it uncomfortable? Because you would think maybe because they're so thin and so light that they would be an issue. And I've been telling people, no, they're actually remarkably comfortable. Maybe some of the most comfortable thin boots that you can get. And the reason is there's not enough structure or stiffness to the upper to be uncomfortable. It just doesn't work.
And playing with them might be uncomfortable if, of course, you get stepped on. That's going to be hell. But also, kicking the ball in itself, if you've got like a low threshold of pain, kicking the ball is not necessarily nice. I didn't enjoy myself taking like shot after shot trying to get the top ins when we were shooting the playtest. Apparently, my pain threshold is not very it's not the best. But that's the way it goes. But you're right. It is comfortable when you have it on, I would say. And you know,
really,
also when it comes to, you know, like moving out there, when you put your foot down, if you feel it's uncomfortable, that your foot is being, you know, slides around and really tests the structure and the hold of the boot. And really, you go into those extreme positions inside the boot, you really put a lot of pressure on the sides and the toe. Some people also don't like that, and you get a lot in the Ultra SLs. But yeah, I would also say they're super comfortable because you don't really feel that they're there. There's nothing to be uncomfortable. Right?
It sounds cliche to say that they feel like they don't exist, but it really is.
If they feel like
they don't exist, look, where they will be uncomfortable because of the longer stud shape and the ridiculously thin sole plate is if you're playing on like artificial grass, which you're not supposed to use them on, or like really hard ground. But if you're using it on a nice, like well-kept, slightly soft pitch, it's like running around in your socks. It's pretty cool.
Would you wear them though in a match? You shouldn't hesitate here. You should just say no. For your own good, just say no.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no just for the safety of my feet.
Yeah. But they're fun to have. But basically, it is like an Evo Speed SL 1.2.
It is one of the coolest boots to experience, though.
I agree. It's something that I'm really happy that I've tried, but also something that makes me even more happy when I go back into a Mercurial Neo 3 that actually has a little bit of structure around it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a real life equivalent of something that you would like. You're really excited about, but you're going to buy it and probably only use it once. I can't think of anything. Anyways. I feel like there's so many good examples that would be hilarious, but I just can't think of one.
But you know, thankfully we're not alone. The Boot Nerd fam is out there. So if you can think of something, a real life equivalent to the Ultra SL, let us know in the comment section right down below. We can have some lulz about it next time. But Josh, where do we go? Okay. We mentioned did we talk about the Nemesis or on the Messi boot? No, we talked about the whole reshuffle. And back then, Adidas introduced also the Messi line of boots. This is the Messi 16.1. And basically, when I thought about this topic, I also instantly thought about this and the current Nemesis boots. I don't want to say they're the same, but they're kind of the same. And yes, they're made with different materials. This one is basically made with knit, and this is tension tape. But they're built on the exact same last. The tooling feels very similar in terms of width. They have a very similar feel on foot, and the idea is the same. Feels somewhat like a speed boot, maybe with a little bit more focus on comfort and being like a generally, what did I say before? A general, more widely appealing boot. And then have a little bit of texture on for grip. It's that same boot, just different execution. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I don't 100% disagree. I think there's more of a difference between the two than you're making it out. But I could see why if you like the 16.1, you would like the new Nemesis. It's from a fit perspective, it's pretty similar. I personally think the new Nemesis is a much better football boot for me personally.
I agree.
I'd much prefer it. But yeah, I think there should be similarity from one boot to the next. And I think that if you want to really like dissect what's been the problem with the Messi signature line up until this point, it's this attempt at trying to reinvent the wheel with new models. Where if you look at Cristiano Ronaldo and the Mercurial line in general, while it has changed significantly over the years, it's been a gradual shift, and the same core DNA has remained the same. Where with Messi's boots, they're just, people didn't like this, let's try something new. They don't really like that, let's try this now. And again, everything comes full circle at some point because there's only so many new things that you can try in a pair of football boots. But I would love to get a football boot for Messi that seems to genuinely have some Messi feedback about its design.
Right. Or they actually used, or you basically just make the boots like he has his boots.
It would be cool. Like I think to me, that's still the missed opportunity from any brand in regards to a football boot is you have a guy like that within the brand, put him in a room with a whole bunch of designers and let the designers present all this stuff and record it all, have Messi pick it. And this is Messi's spec football boot that you can buy. I feel like people would go nuts for that. I would be so curious to try that out.
Absolutely. And yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe it's because they feel that he likes old tech and he doesn't want to go into some, new. I don't know, man. It's a little bit weird. But one thing that just occurred to me is that it's funny with the X, from the F50 to the X. It feels like people complained, the F50 is the same. It's been the same for 5 years. We want something new. And then Adidas gave us something new and something radically different. And then people started complaining after a couple of years, we want this, we want the F50 adizero. But then we take a boot like the Phantom Venoms, where a lot of people also complained a little bit that it was too similar to the T90 Laser IV. Like, it was basically the same concept, just in a slightly more hypervenomed package, right? So what I'm trying to get at is, are people, and are we also a little bit hypocritical when it comes to this stuff? And does it depend on the silo and how popular it is? Do you know what I'm saying?
I 100% agree with you. And I was just talking about this in my last video, where we as consumers scream for so many different products that brands don't give us. And it seems like such an obvious thing for them to make that us consumers want so badly. But then sometimes when we get it, we realize why they didn't do it in the first place. And look, I think the Venom from an objective performance characteristics standpoint is a better football boot than the Laser IV.
Oh, hallelujah. That's the first time you said that on camera. I have it now.
I would prefer to wear the Laser IV. Don't get me wrong.
Fair enough.
But I think that the Venom made a lot of sense in terms of them taking some T90 DNA and some Hypervenom DNA, combining it into one boot and having it work in 2019, 2020. And it's still a great football boot, even though it's technically not a current model anymore. I would make the argument it's probably better than the Phantom GT that has replaced it. There's an argument to be made there. I just think it's the reason why it's gone already is because it did, as good as it is, it did not sell all that well.
No.
And look, sales are ultimately what's going to drive the continuation of any line of football boots or products. If people are not buying the product, then there's very little incentive to continue producing that product and or doing a second generation. So that's... And this has been historic with Nike, is they always do this whenever they feel like the momentum has been lost. And the Venom really didn't have any momentum ever.
But the funny thing is they did this, which was kind of a nod back to the T90 Laser IV with like some Hypervenom sprinkle on top. That didn't work out in terms of sales. What do? Okay, they turn to the Phantom GT. What's the Phantom GT inspired by? Hypervenom Phantom 1. So again, it feels like they're just looking back to older popular models and saying, okay, can we kind of replicate the magic from that boot and have another smash hit? And yes, on one side, I'm thinking like that's super lazy. That's a little bit that's not like pushing the limits. That's not being innovative. But on the other hand, if they went out and done something completely and significantly different, maybe we would complain about not getting what we loved so much before. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, are we ever able to be satisfied? We're just a fickle bunch.
That's something you learn. I think we've both learned that being in the public eye so often with videos and stuff like that, where you can make a video or produce a piece of content that you think is a smash hit, 10 out of 10. Everyone's going to love this. And there's always going to be that one hater. That's just how it is, right? And football boots, again, you can't please everybody. And there's also a reason why these big brands have 3 or 4 different lines, right? They're trying to make one boot for you, not necessarily 4 boots that you're going to like, right? I think for me with the Venoms specifically, the concept was a really cool idea. And I like the visual tie back that it had to something like a T90 Laser IV. I think the issue was that they just didn't, they needed to go one step further in terms of like the extreme execution. Because I think the Laser 4 was the worst one to do a remake of. Because it was the least extreme, it was the most dialed back, and it's I mean, let's face it, it was the last one for a reason, right? It's a good boot, but you look at Laser 3, 2, and 1, and they all had something far more extreme and unique about them, where the Venom was like, okay, it's unique in that it's a football boot with a striking element in 2019. There's really no other options for that. But then what we saw, what Adidas did with the Predator, introducing literal rubber spikes all over the place, much more extreme concept that actually works the part as well. People really responded to that. And that killed, if the Venom already didn't have any momentum, it had even less momentum once the Preds came out.
But that was a brilliant segue to the next boot we should talk about. Obviously, no, this is not the Predator Accelerator. This is, but we've mentioned this so many times, so I'm just going to go over it quickly. The Predator 20 Plus has done an absolutely brilliant job of basically being the same concept that we saw and loved on the Predator Accelerator, but just in like a modern package. We get all the modern stuff that we want. SL rubber, that's not too aggressive. It's light. It has prime knit. It's a good fitting laceless boot. Tooling is nice. All of the stuff that you would basically say if you had to do the Accelerator today, just sit down and say everything we wanted to do when we did the Accelerator, but we have modern technology. What would we do? It'd probably do something along the lines of this or the 20.1s, right? And that is what I feel is like a successful way of building on the same concept. And I think a prime example of giving people what they want, but in a very new way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like this for me is one of the best examples of really, I don't want to say it's not lazy, right? But you're using your knowledge and your heritage and a concept that you have developed as a brand to kind of, you're prolonging that concept's lifespan by introducing something cool and new on the same platform. Does it make sense?
Yes. Look, for me, what the Predator line always represented, similar to the Mercurial, similar to a lot of football boots that are very memorable over the last 30 years, is it came out and it introduced something that we had never seen before. And that was cool about getting a new Predator. It's like, oh, what's going to be different compared to the last one while still maintaining the same general concept around striking the ball. And it's obviously since shifted into control rather than power. I'm not sure why brands seem to think that that's like people are more interested in controlling the ball than they are shooting the ball now. It seems
tiki-taka, I think.
I don't know. It just seems like a weird thing to me. I get that the game has turned into more skill-based than anything else, and that's what a lot of the younger generation seems to be more concerned with. But I think what they did with the latest Predator was very risky, because there was definitely a huge chance where it's like, we show this to the public and everyone's like, that is awful. There's no chance I'm going to wear it. But the opposite effect happened, and really the best case scenario where people are like, that's very cool, or I don't love how it looks, but it's such an extreme design concept that I just want to try them. And I think that's something that's very important in the modern football boot market, is because there are so many options. There has to be something about your football boot that is different enough to say, I can only get that from that model, which is why I'm going to buy that boot over everything else. Where I think when you try, like the Mercurial has been the gold standard and everybody's been chasing the Mercurial for so long, where when you try to copy a Mercurial, it's going to be difficult to pull people away from just buying the OG, Like if you like McDonald's, there's no reason to go to Burger King.
But that's also something, because obviously we have to mention the Mercurial. I mean, the concept has been the same, bar a few oopsies along the years. Vapor 4, I'm looking at you. Vapor 5 also absolutely. Let's not mention the Superflies, but it's largely been the same concept of this minimalist, really almost track spike like speed boot, right? Mm-hmm. And this is going to be the question. Is this a little, I'm not going to say lazy, but is this just like realizing you have a winning concept and running with the same idea in different executions? Is that just playing it safe because it's just a winner? Or, what's more admirable? Is it doing that or pulling a Pred 20? Because on one hand, the Mercs sell like hot bread in the morning, right? But when you think about it, the Pred, as you said, it was maybe a bolder move than introducing Flyknit on a Mercurial. I mean, so many boots are knit right now. And I realized Nike introduced fly knit on the Magistobra, all that stuff. Is it a bolder move?
It is a bolder move, but it's also what brought the success to that line in the first place. It's funny because the Preds and the Mercurials to me are like the most successful or notable lines of football boots ever created. And again, the Tiempo's been around for a long time, but the Tiempo's been more boring, let's say, over the years. But what's interesting is the Mercurial has built its success upon a concept that people really liked and was different from the get-go. They have kind of perfected that concept given whichever time period the boot has existed in. Like as much as we don't like the Vapor 4 or the Vapor 5 or whatever it is, there weren't really any great alternatives at those times from other brands anyways. So it was always the best option for what the concept was at the time. And they've just built on that over the years. And there's legitimately people, look, we're both a little older now. I know guys that have worn Mercurials their entire life. And they've had no reason to switch and they've not wanted to switch. And that's extremely difficult for any brand to do. Where the Predator has maintained its interest over the years by reinventing the same concept with every new model. And the ones that have been on the more extreme side for the most part, I would say have been the most popular over the years. And it's unfortunate what Adidas did because I think they lost a lot of their fan base by this little Predator hiatus they did at one point in time, but they're doing their best effort, I think, to bring it back. The boot's very different than it once was, but they're doing, I think, what they need to do to get people excited about the Predator again.
But do you think that's a balance for Nike? Because I'm not saying they're getting too comfortable with the Mercurial, but also they don't really have a reason to change it that much. And it must be a little bit of a balance for when a new designer or a new engineer comes into Nike and they say, okay, we got to make a new generation of the Mercurial. It has to be innovative. We need to be able to tell this story, but you have to follow this very, very, you have to follow the DNA very closely. You can't change too much because then we risk people not liking it anymore and the competition is strong. Do you know what I mean? Is that like a little bit of a threat to them long term that they can only improve it or change it so much because they have the winning formula that they need to stay within?
Yes and no. I guess I would say you're right if people seemed like they were sick of Mercurials, but I do not get that sense whatsoever. So I don't see a reason for them to change it. It's a routine football boot at this point in time where there's a lot of guys that every time they need a new boot, they're going to go and they're going to buy a Nike Mercurial regardless. They're not even interested in anything else. And because of the familiarity that is carried over the years through that line, regardless of what changes they make that the average consumer is not even probably going to notice, there's that familiarity in the way that it fits and the way that it looks. And I think a lot of people at this point, they're just, look, if they're not sick of it by now, I don't know when they're going to get sick of it.
You're probably right. And you know, from a business point of view, that is what makes the most sense. It's just a shame, like you said, a very important word here. You said routine. To me, routine is not what you want to associate with being an innovative company. It's basically the opposite, right?
Yeah.
I don't think, do they need to? No. Are they gonna? Well, they're gonna do enough, but are they gonna like completely smash expectations and completely obliterate all everything we know about football boots with the Mercurial? I don't think so, because again, they don't have to. It's kind of like a routine job for them. They're winning anyway.
Look, I think the best parallel for this would be the Nike Mercurial is the Apple of the football boot world, where there's a new iPhone every year. And like, for example, the latest iPhone doesn't seem like it's that different from the last one, but there's still a large number of people that are ready to wait in line for 2 days to get this new iPhone that they totally don't need. That's not that different from the last one, but because they love Apple and the iPhone so much, they're going to do it. So it's one of those situations where a brand has such a loyal following at this point. It would just take a gigantic, and honestly, I think at this point it would have to be several different generations of bad Mercurials to really kill the reputation, because it's just that strong at this point.
They survived 4, 5, and 6, really, and 7. They survived 4 generations of shitty Mercurials, pardon my French. 4 generations.
But again, if you look at what was Puma doing at the time, they had V constructs about, they had these V series boots that were like lasted 5 minutes, and then Adi was doing the F50 Tune-It. Like, it was just a perfect storm for Nike to have a slip-up situation. But now, again, you can say that the speed boot category between Puma, Nike, Adidas, and even Mizuno, even New Balance, I know that they're not a serious competitor. No. But if there's some serious alternatives to the Mercurial right now, more so than there have ever been in a very long time.
Yeah, if the Furon had come out in 2013, people would have been worried, because it's not a bad. You just said Mizuno. I just wanted to bring this up because it's basically, we have the Neo 1s and the Neo 3s, and they're basically the same boot with a few tweaks here and there, but this is 10 years old.
And there you go, right? And that's a case of a brand knowing what their consumers want. And hey, they legit didn't change it for 10 years. Like, it stayed exactly the same. And there were still people that were very loyal to that football boot and continued to buy them, right?
And they still convinced us to claim that they're some of the best football boots out there. So, I mean, they know what they're doing. I don't know what the conclusion to this is, but more that, I think we wanted to go to come to the conclusion that, all this development in the football boot industry is kind of cyclical. Cyclical? It goes in cycles? How do you say that?
Goes in cycles. I think goes in cycles is how you would say it.
Okay. It goes in cycles, right? And we see that there are these streams and tendencies within football boots that the brands kind of take in, just like with colorways, that they take in, then they adjust them to fit the given time period and to make it work and still seem fresh. But that the platforms they're building on is more or less still the same as they were 10 years ago. Is that unfair to say?
No, it's totally fair to say, because I think what's different about a lot of sports equipment, certainly football boots, is we're always pushed on this technology angle. But it's not like a phone or a computer where new technology is undeniably better than old technology. It's more so with football boots, the way that it's presented to us as consumers, as to whether or not this is a worthwhile new technology, like the texture on the Phantom GT. We've seen it before. Texture on a football boot is nothing new, but it's been presented to us as this crazy new thing.
When do you think we're going to see like a big significant change where you can say we jump from one platform to the other?
It's really difficult to say. I'm very curious to see what this next Mercurial is going to be, because it's clearly not going to be Flyknit, which is going to be a big shift for the Mercurial, because that's been the norm since 2014, effectively, if we discount some Vapor models. So this is going to be, I think, to a certain extent, that moment where Nike gains or loses some Mercurial fan base, because again, the Puma Ultra right now, if you really love the knitted speed boot concept and you don't care for this next gen Mercurial, there's very good reason to jump ship. Very good reason. So to me, it looks like they're kind of going more so into competing in the synthetic realm, like what Adidas is doing with the X. So it'll be very curious. It's going to be interesting, because I think we're going to have 3 very different speed boots from the 3 big brands, versus having 3 brands kind of doing variations of the same thing that Nike's just done better over the last little while.
Interesting point of view. I would love to give mine, but I'm going to get in trouble if I say too much. So I'm just going to leave it there. But very interesting point of view. Thank you for that.
Jay is basically like a walking NDA. Yeah. He just knows way too much.
Oh man. So yeah, that was the discussion. If you have any thoughts on the whole boots building on boot concepts being reincarnated, let us know your thoughts in the comment section right down below. Have we been fair, or am I too unfair when I say all this stuff? Well, yeah, leave your thoughts down below. Let's have a good discussion. But Josh, we also have a bunch of questions we want to go through. We have one from Joe Giaya. And if you have any questions, of course, comments below. We're going to answer them next time. But Joe Giaya, now here's the real question. Would you rather wear the worst colorway of the Hyper Venom Phantom 2 or the weird Nemesis or Eyeball Pumas? 2 goals over drinks go.
Oh, I'd wear the weird Pumas or the Nemesis, honestly. Yeah. I just didn't care for the Phantom 2. I'll take a bad colorway over a bad football boot.
That's also like the worst colorway of the Hyper Venom Phantom 2. So that's the worst and the worst. That's a bad combination because neither the Puma Future 6.1 or the Nemesis Plus or Nemesis 0.1s are bad football boots. And that's where they win against the Hyper Venom 2s because they sucked.
Okay, let's do an add-on to this question because I'm just genuinely curious. When you were once upon a time when you were buying all your football boots,
it's a long time ago.
Would you? Because when I was growing up, I just got whatever colorway was on sale of the boot that I wanted. That was me. I never ever was like, I never cared about style enough to pay an extra $20, $40, $60 for the latest colorway that I liked better than the one that was on sale. I just always went for the cheaper one.
Right.
What about you?
I would definitely say that I was being a bit more picky and I was ready to wait for the colorways that I wanted to wear to go on sale. It was very rarely because I was like, I was in high school or whatever the equivalent is, 15, 16, 17, didn't have much money, spent almost all of my money on video games and football boots. So I had to wait for like good deals, right? But I think I waited more than some people would for the right colorways. A little bit picky back then.
That's fair. I'm just thinking like Vapor 4s as an example. So many good colorways. I had none of the good ones.
I basically back then, I remember buying the Vapor 3 R9 colorway, the yellow and green, because it was on sale actually at Unisport. It was really, really cheap. It was like 120 euros or something. Ridiculous, right? And I actually remember back then really hating myself for buying that colorway because I would rather have one of the less flashy ones. Now, of course, I'm kicking myself in the teeth for like letting it go when it fell to pieces because it's an amazing colorway, right? But now I wanted the good ones.
Yeah, even as a kid, I remember because I made a whole video talking about how at one point in time I got banned from using Nike warranty.
Oh yeah.
But the way the warranty worked in Canada for Nike is it was different from the States. In the States, you would send them in and they would give you a voucher and you could go on Nike's website and order a new pair with the voucher. But Nike did not have a Canadian online store until like not that long ago, maybe like 3-4 years now. So when I was a kid, it was just like there were Nike stores, like maybe a few within the whole country, and that was it. So you would send in a product for warranty, they would either approve it or deny it, and then they would just send you the equivalent. If they had the same boot, they would send you whatever the same boot was in whatever colorway they had in the same size, or if it was the new generation, they'd send you the new generation. So it was always like a mystery what you were going to get back from Nike. So I ended up with some pretty weird colorways over the years from that.
And then you got yourself banned in the process. Solid job, man. Anyway, good question. Jesus Salcedo asks, do you recommend using the Preds 20 Plus on AG? Would you?
I think they're okay.
Yeah.
I think I've been getting a lot of questions seemingly about FG AG stud patterns in the last couple of weeks. I don't know why. But I really feel like Adidas and Puma, who are both, Adidas less so now, is pushing the FG AG thing. Puma is still doing it. Like the Puma Ultra, as an example, they brand that as FG AG. That is not an AG friendly stud pattern, in my opinion.
Definitely
it's
not.
Dangerous. No. It's too clingy. It's too grippy. Like you can do it. Go be my guest, but you are putting yourself at a higher risk of injury wearing that in a match where other players can bump you and stuff like that. I'll be honest, it's probably not a good idea.
And I've used the Ultra quite a few times on AG, but I also play on the 4G, like really high quality, very good AG pitches. If you go on an older generation, I wouldn't even use the Preds. The Preds are solid because they have rounded studs and they are a little less aggressive. They don't cling as much, but yeah, if it's a good AG pitch and you know the risk, you can do it, and it will likely be all right. But know that the risk is there, and if it's an older AG pitch, 3G, like really worn down, don't do it. It's like a recipe for disaster.
To just as a general rule of thumb, I would say with FG AG stud patterns, they are basically FG stud patterns that brands are saying you can wear them on AG if you want.
Yeah. So
that's
basically
the extent of their AG capabilities.
And it's like basically a warranty thing. So they say that, hey, if you use these boots on AG, the warranty still covers you. If they follow, they're FG boots. That's the way it is.
It's like having a water resistant phone. Oh, it's water resistant up to 3 meters. Like, well, I'm hoping my phone's never going to be 3 meters in water, and I'm never going to test that, but it's good to know.
Yeah, that's the way it is. We have a couple of questions from Justin Chen. Based on just lockdown, can you rank these boots? Vapor 13 Elite, Vapor 13 Techcraft, and Phantom Visions. Also, is JayMike more of a Mizuno fanboy or a Select fanboy? I don't know if I'm a fanboy of any of the brands, because I obviously feel that I'm being very objective and, But Josh, tell me. Biggest fanboy, which brand?
I think you're more Mizuno fanboy than you are Select, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because it's hard to say you're a Select fan. You're Danish. Like I would expect you to be a Select
born
fanboy.
Select fanboys.
Yeah, it's like you have no choice.
Yeah, that's true.
There's probably you probably end up going to jail in Denmark if you say something bad about Select.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
It probably just doesn't work like that. But in terms of ranking those three, I'm number one is the regular Vapor. There's no doubt about that. I'm curious what your opinion is, but I think I would go regular Vapor 1, Techcraft Vapor 2, Vision 3. Because I still think that the shape and the fit of a Mercurial makes for such a big difference in terms of feel and responsiveness.
Yeah. And
versus the Vision.
I know it probably doesn't make a big difference like physiologically, but the fact that you have that anatomical plate in the Vapor, it feels like you're sat a little bit deeper in the boot. And at least mentally for me, it means that it feels slightly more responsive. The shape is better. And I would even say that, Techcraft depends on which version we're talking, but the latest one that has the Flyknit, the high tenacity ons, and then the leather, I would definitely have that as number 2. First Vapor 13 Techcraft, probably the Visions over that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
it's a little. The upper is a little. It overstretches quite easily, which means. Ugh.
Yeah, it's funny because I think responsiveness. You made a good point there. Responsiveness, as much as it's an objective characteristic, it's very much a feel thing.
Oh, definitely.
Because like if you're sprinting for a ball 1-on-1 with an opposing player and you both cut at the same time, if you lose that foot race, it's not because your boots were less responsive and his were more. It's just it really is a feel thing. And I think if we're talking about what has made the Mercurial so great and popular over the years, it's that connected one-to-one, the instant that you react is the instant that the boots react type of sensation that boot does arguably better than anything else.
But this is why, and now I'm gonna plug you a little bit, but this is why you should wear grip socks, guys, because grip socks, there's also the added grip, and so physically it also works, right? But grip socks also give you the sensation, like the mental edge of actually being better connected to your boots. And that's something that to me matters a lot. If I feel that there's just like a little bit of motion inside my boots, I don't feel like I'm at the top of my game. And I feel like there's an obstacle for me to be as responsive and reactive as I can be. And that's why I love grip socks, because they make me feel a little bit more, they make me feel sharper. Even though they might, maybe it's like a 0.2 or 0.02% that I actually am fast. I don't know. It's the mental side of things.
And look, I appreciate that plug, but it's funny because grip socks, not to just talk about grip socks again, but I personally would wear grip socks for a different reason. And it's more so for me, the comfort. I think you get the added benefit of less slippage inside of your boots, which I think is pretty much always beneficial. I don't know, find me a person who likes slipping around inside their boots. It's kind of a weird thing in my opinion. But for me, it's the sock staying in place, which makes for a much more comfortable sensation. Comfort for me is such a big thing in football boots, and there is nothing worse than constantly having to adjust your socks or feeling like they're moving around inside of your boots. That is typically when you run into issues with blisters and stuff like that. So again, Pure Grip socks, $14.99 a pair. We tried to make it as inexpensive as possible so everybody has access to something that is genuinely beneficial, not only in terms of like minute performance characteristics, but also in terms of comfort. Yeah. There's a reason why grip socks are a popular product.
No, I buy that. Definitely. But I think in now we're talking responsiveness. I think this is where grip socks can really make a difference, because even in a boot that might not be the most responsive thing in the world, you actually get that.
Yeah,
you get that locked in responsive sensation.
Look, if you've made it 50 minutes into the Boot Nerds podcast, episode 90, then clearly you care about every little bit of performance that you can scrape out of your football boots. And if you're actively thinking about how your boots are performing, then you're probably going to enjoy the experience of a grip socks, whether they're Pure Grip socks or any other brand for that matter.
Yes. But if you like to save money, I mean,
saving money is great.
Go support Josh. He's doing a good job. Monkfish asks, hey, you ever think we'll see metal bladed studs again like we used to see on the Preds? Thank you. And I'm going to quote a very good friend and say there's a very simple answer to that question. And that answer is no. They're heavy. They're dangerous. They're probably more expensive to make. Not going to happen.
Yeah. I would love to see it. The problem I think with that is I'm not sure if they could get approval for that anymore.
No.
It might be outlawed. Second thing is I don't think that it really makes sense in 2020 to promote a boot on a soft ground stud pattern, because it still is uncommon for the vast majority of the world.
Unless you live in England.
And then number 3 is just the complexity of the mechanism to hold the stud in place that is required when you go with a non-screw-in form factor. And I'm sure there's a clever way of doing it where you could still get a blade to screw in and line up properly.
Yeah, you had the X traction that was pretty solid. Or was it the Nike stuff? The
clip-in kind of thing.
But it just, again, it requires bulk on the outsole that adds weight, and that's not something you're interested in. I don't think it makes sense anymore. We've moved on to better, to a better place.
To me, what I would say is I don't think there's actually much benefit to it. I think that a soft ground stud pattern, as long as the studs are long enough and the ground is soft enough, it's going to be very similar across the board, no matter the specific shape of the stud.
It has the specific benefit that people stay the hell away from you, because they know you're going to kill them if you get anywhere near them. So that's I mean, when you're a small guy like me, that metal bladed studs are awesome.
That would be, but can you imagine how intimidating like a Predator 20 with spikes all over it with bladed metal studs coming out the bottom would look? That would just be the most like intimidating football boot ever made.
Addy, you heard it.
Somebody needs to do that. Would be like if anybody's out there that like knows how to like customize football boots and like do sole swaps and stuff. Imagine a Mania soft ground sole plate on a Predator 20 upper. That would be sick.
See, this idea is so good that Addy, we're going to take 15%.
15%.
15%, yeah. We also have a question from Jason Moore. We've kind of talked about it, and you've kind of elaborated a little bit. I can't say too much. Do either of you expect to see more traditional synthetic uppers of boots in the future, like the Ghosted line? Would either of you be surprised to see thicker types of synthetic like Kanga Light to make a return? I think if the X Ghosted does well on shelves, that we will likely see some thinner, pingy synthetics with some regularity, but I'm not sure about the plusher stuff.
Yeah,
you take that. I can't. I know too much.
I think synthetics are going to make a comeback for the simple reason that all the brands have exhausted what is possible with knits and textiles at this point, at least for the time being. Like there's no variation of a fly knit upper that I think Nike can make at this point that people are going to be like blown away by.
Phantom DT
so synthetics are
example,
logical.
Right?
Yeah, right. It's just like boring. Like people don't care anymore. It's pretty clear. And synthetics have so much potential. I think what's cool about synthetics is that there's that element of mystery again when it comes to new football boots that we haven't had for a little while. Because the reason why knits replace synthetics is because They were very popular, and there's an argument to be made that because of the popularity, it trumped what was actually good at the time. Because if we look back at early knitted uppers, well, a lot of them were okay. I think you could have made the argument that the synthetics had evolved to a point where they were better than first gen knit. So I would really like to see a continuation of what was happening in the synthetic football boot space, because it was really at a point where like you could wear a synthetic boot even if you hated synthetics, because there was just that, it got that good. And I don't know. I'd be really curious to see what brands could do given all the new concepts that have evolved in football boots with mid-cut designs and one-piece uppers and all this stuff.
Right.
Like, let's bring some synthetics back. I'd love a CTR 360. Like, I know they're trying to like do this control skill thing with the Phantom GT, but people would get genuinely excited about a CTR boot again, in my opinion.
Right. Let me put it this way. I think in 5 years' time, we will see that the brands have used all the knowledge and all the learnings they have from knit to make some absolutely killer synthetics. Well, let's see what the next year or two brings.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think that's a good conclusion to this episode.
Yeah.
Unless you got another question.
Nah, I mean, let's not. We're gonna talk about that for ages. So we're gonna save that for episode 91. And if you have any more questions you'd like us to answer, you should leave them in the comment section right down below. You should also tell us if we've absolutely lost the plot with some of the opinions that we gave in this episode. It happens. We're 90 episodes in. We're sorry, guys. We're actually it happens. But let us know what you think in the comment section right down below. Go subscribe to the podcast if you want to hear more episodes the second they launch. You can also go and follow us on our respective channels by clicking the bubbles over our heads. And of course, leave us a like if you had a good time. And with those words, I've been JayMike and I approve this message. Ciao, Bella.
Later.